Greetings, everybody! It is I, Tantus Dracovin, your lord, here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome to those of you joining me live on Twitch. Of course, sorry, it's a late day, very busy in the morning. For those of you who are joining me on YouTube, hey, my busy schedule doesn't affect your ability to watch this video at all. Please enjoy as much as possible. But regardless, for those of you who are joining me now, either currently in time or in the future, welcome. It's another day, and we're talking more about tabletop. And I got a very interesting set of things to talk about today, because I decided for today a great thing to do would be to finish the classes. What I mean is, last time I talked about classes, I went over the 12 base classes that you will find in the Pathfinder 2nd Edition core rulebook. And I went through them on the Archives of Nethys. Boom! Here's my core rulebook. Look at this mighty thing. But there have been, as of right now, 10 other classes that have been introduced over the course of time since 2nd Edition has come out that increase and add new, different ways of playing characters. And so I wanted to talk about them, including the two uncommon ones, the Gunslinger and the Inventor. So we are going to go through all of these classes, and hopefully you will learn about them, see like what they do, and find out if you are interested in playing them. So, why don't we dive right in? Because honestly, that's why we're here. We've talked about how all these classes are, and hopefully if you're catching this part 2, you've caught on to part 1 of the class guide. So let me throw myself over into the corner, wham! And let me open up the classes. Alright! So we talked about an Alchemist, we talked about a Barbarian, we talked about a Bard, we talked about Champion, we talked about Cleric, Druid, Fighter. We've talked about a lot of them. Now, alphabetically, Gunslinger and Inventor are next, but we're going to wait to talk about them. We're going to talk about everything else other alphabetically, and move on to the two uncommon classes last. And remember, what does uncommon mean? It means ask your GM if it's appropriate. That's about it. That's the best thing to say about it. Your GM will tell you if something common is inappropriate for a game, or something common is less appropriate for a game. But when it comes to uncommon things, you need direct approval, because effectively, if you're using Galarian, uncommon means it doesn't show up very often. It is rarer. There is an actual rare, but uncommon is like. Let's talk about the Investigator, because this is the first one of a very different type of classes. We've gone beyond the type of classes. This is someone that looks into information, discovers secrets, unravels mysteries. You are doing exactly what you sound like. You're investigating. Intelligence is the most important part of your stat here. Again, I'm not going to get into role-playing an investigator. The general idea that, you know, you have insights about enemies and things in the world, that you understand how things, dangerous stuff are. You study your enemies, perceive them, striking where it hurts most, and, you know, assisting your party through your knowledge and, you know, adding aid. That's the kind of idea. I'll use that during combat encounters to give you a general idea of each of these classes, because the general base classes, they're very easy. They've appeared in a lot of other media, generally speaking. They are simple to understand what they do. But when we're getting into these more unusual ones, we have to kind of break down a little bit more what it means to play these classes and why are they unique and different. And an Investigator is a little different. Of course, we have our initial proficiencies, as we've always gone through when we talk about these classes. Expert in Perception, really good at seeing. And you get Training in Society. That's a key thing about Investigator. You're good at studying people. Additional skills, and one or more skills determined by your methodology. We're going to talk about that. And Investigator class DCs you get proficiency in. Alright, our list here. Of course, we get a lot of stuff here. But the first main thing for an Investigator that you get is you're on the case. Your adventures are cases to be solved. So, you get two abilities here that are specifically Investigator. Pursue a lead and Clue in. Clue in being a reaction you could do once per 10 minutes. You use it to basically share some information with someone. So it's like, think of it this way. When you're pursuing a lead, you spend 1 minute examining details of a potential clue, and you can make a perception or skill check to investigate the designated subject with a +1 circumstance bonus. And the check, again, determines by the situation you are and what ability score that one uses. Again, depends on the situation you're in. They specifically say the investigation checks are typically perception checks or skill checks that use intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. That's it. You can have 2 active investigations at a time, but what Clue In does is you can give someone a circumstance bonus to their check equal to the circumstance bonus of checks investigating or pursue a lead. So, pursue a lead starts at the +1, could get higher, things could change it. We're not talking about that. The way this is worded could change, could increase, but you can give that +1 to an ally of yours then. Any check that they're doing in something you're pursuing a lead of. Then we have our second ability that we do get at first level, because we get a bunch of these at first level. Devise a stratagem, which is 1 action. You basically get a weakness in combat. Choose a creature you see, roll a d20. If you strike, if you strike that creature later on this round, you can use the result of this die roll instead of your normal attack. It gives you an extra d20 roll that you can effectively use to replace one of your others. Now, you could devise a stratagem and honestly roll bad, but there is another part of this. When you use the substitution, you can also add your intelligence modifier to your attack roll instead of strength or dexterity, provided the strike is an agile or finesse weapon, or agile, finesse, unarmed strike, or ranged weapon. So, under that list is, if you do that list of things effectively, once I devise a stratagem, I roll a d20, I can keep that d20, and later on, when I attack it, I can use that d20. And you may say, well, why do I want to use an action to do that? Think about it this way. If I use 3 actions on my 3rd action, I'm going to have -10. It's not going to have a high chance of hitting. It still is there. But rather than that, I can roll that dice now and increase the percentage chance of one of my strikes this turn having a better number. I can add a dice roll that there is no failure or success on. It's just an extra dice roll I can use. So devise stratagem is very useful, and it is a technique you could definitely use to set up things. And the switching out your strength or dexterity for intelligence can be very powerful too. So, then we get a methodology. Woo! Which we're going to click on methodologies and open up here and take a look at it. It's just study of savvy. You're savvy in many areas, your particular interests. They have alchemical sciences, empiricism, forensic medicine, interrogation. Think of it this way: as you investigate stuff, what direction do you go about that? Do you use your knowledge of alchemy and studying particulates and fluid? Do you calculate data and information? Do you use more medical and forensic knowledge? Or do you basically communicate with people and have, interrogations? And as you can see, some of them give you various training and possible skill feats. Others give you special abilities that, like the expertise inspection here, quick tincture, and pointed question, depending on your methodology. So methodology is effectively what you do. Then, of course, you get investigator class feats, which we'll just talk about a few of the early level ones. And some of these do have methodology-based things. You can see the first one we can actually see is a 4th level methodology, where if you take the alchemical science, you get a bonus thing. But there is some of these at higher levels that are based upon that. Not a lot of them. So your methodology can have an effect, but it's not going to have a huge effect. Things like no weakness, where when you devise a stratagem, you can attempt to roll to recall knowledge as part of the action. That can be pretty good. Recall knowledge check, you're adding an extra check to know stuff about something. Takedown expert, you can take down enemies alive. You can, it's easier to non-lethal. Flexible studies, what this is when you prepare daily, you can become temporarily trained in one skill of your choice. And until effectively, at the beginning of the day, I rest up, I prepare myself for the day, and I can be like, you know what, I'm trained in that skill today. You know, it's a temporary one. It doesn't count as a prerequisite for anything else. It's not permanent for like things for like feats and stuff. But for the day, until I rest again and get my other stuff back again, I got a skill that I can use. So it's pretty good. Strategic strike. Here's one. When making a strike that adds your intelligence modifier to your attack rolls, you do additional precision damage. So if you devise a stratagem to set up the extra die and add your intelligence to an attack roll, guess what I can also do now? Roll an extra d6 of damage, which goes up as you get higher level. So now there's an extra reason to do that, to devise a stratagem, use it with one of your attacks, and then when that stratagem is devised, deal some extra damage. Skill fits, skill creates. Keen Resurrection is something you can the bonus proficiency to untrained skill checks recall knowledge equal to your level instead of +0. So you become good at using recall knowledge, basically identifying things no matter what, even if you're untrained at it. That is a really good one too, Keen Recollection, if you are very like, I want to know about monsters and stuff like that. As you recall, normally you just roll with your intelligence modifier normally. And if you're trained, it's your level +2 plus intelligence modifier. Now it's your level +0 if you're untrained, for specifically recall knowledge for all the various kind of knowledge-based things. You gain more skill feats that are specifically for your methodology or certain things from skill you gained. So it's like you gain some bonus skill feats in this one too. Ability boosts, ancestry feats, weapon expertise, which is greater weapons, better perception, etc. Investigator expertise, which you gain their circumstance bonus for pursue the lead goes up to 2. Remember, pursue the lead was +1, now it's +2, which affects a number of things. Deductive improvisation, which is again stuff you're untrained with and being able to do that. Some increases in will saves, more perception, light armor, more weapons, evasion, greater weapon specialization, greater resolve, and up till master detective, which you get at your high levels, which I believe is at 19th level. I remember it's 19th level. Say Oathfinder, second-y. So, Investigator, as we kind of looked over here, you are a combat character. There's some things that feel very roguish, and that's one of those things is like, it still feels a different job than a rogue. Certainly, you get an ability to something akin to a sneak attack, but rather than a rogue, which is going to have a jack of all trades of skills, and the sneak attack, and be very sneaky, be very, like, more underhanded, as an investigator, you're knowledge-based, and you can share that knowledge with your allies, but you can take advantage of that knowledge to do that extra damage. And that is the basic idea of an investigator. So very different than something we've seen before, but, honestly speaking, very interesting, and a very interesting direction you could take for your character. So, now, after Investigator, which we'll look at this Investigator guy here. That's an Investigator from Pathfinder. Let's talk Magus. Here's our Magus friend, you know, as one of the images. So Magus is closest thing to describe a Magus is it's a fighter mage combo kind of thing. Now it's a little bit more complex than that, so it's a little bit different than, let's say, an Eldritch Knight from old Prestige classes or from D&D 5e, which is a fighter mage combo. Yes, there is a degree of that in a Magus, but Maguses do things by fusing spells and strikes together. So it's not only am I fusing the abilities of being able to cast spells and use weapons at the same time, I'm also fusing my weapons and my attacks with my spells. They conduct arcane research just like a wizard does. And, you know, you train just like a wizard does. But, unlike a wizard, they are combat-based. So, you get strength or dex as your key ability score. And you're going to be channeling spells to attack things. That's the best way to describe it. Here's the basic proficiencies as you get. You will have spells. Look at that there. Arcane spell attacks, arcane spell DCs. So you're going to be using the arcane spell list as a Magus. That's the big thing that we're going to say here. It's the main thing you have to notice. And look, just like things, they get up to 9th level spells. And there's the thing that you have to note about a Magus here is they don't get the 10th level here. Magus don't. Remember, let's go back here for a second and go back to our Druid friend. Notice a Druid friend has this nice 10th level thing, which they gain as part of their 19th level abilities. They get 10th level spells. Maguses don't. That is one of the disadvantages you get for being a Magus. But you still get arcane spells, and you have varieties. You will have up to 9th level arcane spells, which you can use. Granted, if you see across here, you have less slots, and the way that this works is a little different than your average spellcaster, as you see. So, let's talk about how Magus and their spellcasting works. You can have no more than 2 spell slots of your highest level, and if you can cast 2nd level higher spells, 2 spell slots of 1 level lower than your highest level spells. Okay. So, this here shows what you can cast. And here's the other big thing is, when you get spells, spell slots of 2nd level or higher, you can fill these slots of stronger versions of lower level spells. This increases the spell's level, heightening to match the spell slot. Many spells have specific improvements when you heighten certain levels. This is an advantage of a Magus. If you recall from previous spellcasters, if I was going to use a heightened spell, if I'm a wizard and using a heightened spell, or a sorcerer that kind of knows spells, I have to have versions of that spell in my knowledge or in my spellbook. Same with the bard, of those higher level spells. If I'm a cleric or druid, I can kind of just do it because, you know, I know all the spells anyway. Magus, though they have a spellbook, functions more like, of course, hey, the cleric or the druid does. You can automatically heighten as it. It is an advantage for you as a Magus. You do not need to learn. If I learn Fireball at 3rd level, I know Fireball. I don't have to learn a 4th level Fireball like a wizard was, or 4th level Fireball like a sorcerer does. I, as a Magus, can just know a 4th level Fireball. Granted, I only have 4 slots, so this advantage means I'm only casting 4 spells normally, and that's it. So, there are some things that can give you some extra slots, as they kind of mark here with the little stars. There's a possibility the Studious Spell Class feature can give you extra slots of these levels for specific spells. So you can see, if I'm Studious, I can get a few extra. And I still know cantrips, but I don't have to have those heightened spells. Just from those words here, you just think about that. Let's go back, you know, heightening these spells. We want to actually talk about it for Wizard. We want to see about it. Because we have to remember, good old Wizard here, and they're heightening the spells. They talk about it. That you have to know versions of these. Oh, it might be under a sorcerer that I want to talk about here. Sorry. I had to click on the correct one. Here. Also, Wizard, it doesn't matter. It's sorcerer and stuff that has that problem. So you're very similar in a way to a wizard in this. But anyway, here is the big ability beyond I can cast some spells, Spell Strike. It takes 2 actions. And what it does is you can channel a spell into a punch or sword thrust to deliver a combined attack. The spell has to take 1 or 2 actions and require a spell attack roll. After that, you know, the effects of the spell occur and are in your attack. You make your melee strike with a weapon or your unarmed strike, and the 2 of them are coupled together. So when your strike hits, the 2 of them count as technically one hit, but it does count as 2 attacks for your multiple attack penalty. So you'd think of it this way. I use my spell strike, my next attack would be at -10. That is an important note for there. It's not at -5. This does take up 2 of your attacks when it comes to that, but you're only making 1 attack roll at your maximum. So I'm doing my spell and my strike together, combined together as 1 attack at my maximum attack rating, or -5 if you're doing 1 attack normally first and the second attack is being a spell strike. You know, regardless. It combines them together and is only the first of wherever it would be. You do have to take a single action with the Concentrate trait to recharge your Spell Strike. You can also recharge your Spell Strike when you cast a Conflict spell that takes at least 1 action to cast. Casting a Focus spell or other type doesn't recharge your Spell Strike. There you go. So there are some other times. So Conflict spells, which are a thing, or using an action recharges it. So you could Spell Strike and recharge it if you wanted to. You can go all out too. And there's some extra specifics about Spell Strikes here. Then we have Arcane Cascade, which is a stance that you can take on. Yeah. So basically it's you kind of divert power of spells into your body. And it's usually you cast a spell or made a spell strike, then you can take a stance. So it's like, oh, I cast my spell, I take a stance. I use my spell strike, I take a stance. And you do your melee strikes do extra damage. If you have things like weapon specialization, it goes up. And, you know, depending on the type of spell, it tells you the type of damage it does here, which is the type of spell you cast. Hybrid Study. It gives you special ability, usually tied to Spell Strike. We can go to Hybrid Studies here. So, see, we mentioned Conflict spells, Studious spells, and effectively it... what happens for this is I'm gaining a ability. You choose one field of Hybrid Study to represent your preferred combination of skills, where you're mixing martial and arcane skills, where you're combining them together and melding them. Think of this as, again, it's very similar to a lot of times they have these kind of choices and builds in a class, like your methodology as an investigator, your inspiration as a bard, things like that. This is like your hybrid study that determines the kind of direction you're taking. As you can see, the number of them here, they give a conflict spell and some studious spells to you, of which, again, the conflict spell is the one that requires a focus point. So a conflict spell is technically a focus spell, but a focus spell is not always a conflict spell, if that makes any sense. That's the way you have to think of it. If you cast a conflict spell, it recharges your spell strike. If you cast a focus spell that isn't a conflict spell, it does not. Okay? Great. We understand that now. So, yes, they're a type of focus spell that is ones that will refocus for you. And you can refocus or redo your ability to spell strike, and usually tied with that. Your studious spells are kind of enhanced power spells for your combat that are added to your spell book and give you more abilities. And they do list some more of them in addition to the hybrid spells you learn. So, like, at second level, you learn this one in addition to your hybrid spell. And at this various level, like, your extra spell slots increase to a third. You get haste for studious spells. You know, we talked about the studious spells, that they are extra slots you kind of have, you know, to use. They are ones for lower level spells, for things like haste or fly or spider climb, true strike, water breathing. And there you go. That's the hybrid study kind of stuff. We talked about conflict spells there. Just mentioned them, that they are tied to that a little bit there, and your focus. And then we get into the normal nitty-gritty of your things here. There's your studious spells and stuff like that, when you get it at 7th level, 11th level, etc. All this stuff is just basics for character leveling up. And eventually you get to double spell strike, which is, you know, you can send the magic spells you store with a spell strike. After you make a spell strike and cast a spell from your spell slot, you retain an echo of the spell stored in your body. Next time you spell strike, you basically also cast that one again. So think of it this way. I spell strike, and then afterwards, if I spell strike again, I also spell strike with that original spell again. So, in the end, you technically, with double spell strike, can cast, like, 8 spells if they're all spell strike spells. You know, 3 of which will be doubled up. So, you know. But it actually has to be, if you choose to cast a different spell, spell strike, or you can 1 minute without using store spell, the store spell, it has to be the same spell, basically. You double it if it's the same spell. That's the only thing about spell strike and double spell strike you have to do. It's the same spell. So 8 spells if you do the same one a lot. But that's a Magus. Me take sword, me put magic and sword into person, blow them up with fire, electricity, or whatever's in my sword. Pretty obvious about that one. Pretty simple about that one. It is your combo melee arcane build to the extreme. Let's talk about an Oracle. They are divine casters in general. They usually go and delve into divine truths that expand beyond your average single deity. They're very much more, while a cleric is devoted to a single deity in the Pathfinder / Galarian world, an Oracle delves into the mysterious and divine energies that exist between all of the creatures. They dive into things that are basics of, like, good, evil, law, chaos, and common things that occur across all deities. They look into the mysteries of that. They are studying divine in a more unique and interesting way than your average cleric would be. They go in a very different direction. So there is a kind of thing that you have this mysterious power based on your ability to dive into that, but you also have this curse that affects you in various ways, which we'll talk about the Oracle curses. Initial proficiencies, you're a divine caster. Congratulations. You get a spell list. You get 10th level spells. The thing about a Oracle that is different from your other divine casters, your other divine caster cleric, is they function more like a bard or sorcerer. They have a spell repertoire. So, cleric, you just know the spells, you memorize them. A wizard, you just know the spells, you memorize them. Sorcerer, whatever their source of power is, just has a spell repertoire. Same with a bard, has a spell repertoire. As an oracle, guess what? You have a spell repertoire. You know a bunch of spells, and, you know, again, similar to that, you swap spells out. To have the heightened versions, you have to have a higher version in your repertoire, etc., etc., etc. Now, let's talk about what, other than being closer to a sorcerer or bard, the way that you work, because you have the repertoire rather than prepared, what else makes a oracle different? Well, the first thing is, you get a mystery. A mystery is closer to, like, a domain that a cleric would have, or a deity that a cleric would have. Remember, when we talked about clerics, you get a deity, you get an anathema, you get a divine font, you get a doctrine. When we're talking about an oracle, you get a mystery. And let's, so mysteries give you revelation spells, which are focus spells for specifically oracles. They give them a oracular curse, which we do have to talk about here, your oracle curse. Effectively, each power you go with has a kind of curse associated with it, which is a counterflux for going deep into that power. You can't really remove it, you can, once triggered, rest and refocus for 8 hours to get it back. It's technically mild and kind of constantly a reminder of your unruly power, but as you use the revelation spells, aka your focus spells, oftentimes that affects your curse. So, effectively, I'm using my revelation spells, my focus spells, getting a bunch of extra bonuses. Oh, guess my curse gets worse until I refocus and rest and relax, and then I can kind of reduce it back to its normal sitting there things. Let's just take a look at mysteries in general. So, the mysteries give you a benefit, a skill you're trained in, a cantrip, the revelation spell, and of course, the domains that are related to you. You know, you select one of these at your first level as the initial domain, and you can get a revelation spell with and then you can cast the revelation spell with the curse-bound trait. You get the revelation spell at first level, and you can get more by taking advanced revelation, greater revelation, divine mystery, oracle feats. So effectively, the first one, the initial revelation spell, you get. After that, the more advanced ones, you have to take oracle feats in order to get those. So if you like the ancestors one that's just here at the bottom, you get ancestral touch. In order to get ancestral defense, ancestral form, you have to take stuff later on. So, yeah. And again, remember, we're getting 2 effective revelation spells. We're getting one chosen by my revelation, but we're also getting one of the spells from, like, we choose this domain, we get the initial domain spell of that first level, and we can cast it as a revelation spell with the curse-bound trait. Like, all of these also have the curse-bound trait. And we get a cantrip and train society and some additional benefits, because you can see Inventor Ancestry gives you some additional benefits. And then we talk curse, and we can see that this curse has kind of influences. It has minor curse, moderate curse, major curse. You start at your minor, effectively. Remember, normally the curse that you have is just sort of there, you know. A curse continually gives you a mild but constant reminder of your otherworldly power. As you cast those revelation spells, whether they're from domain or from originally your mystery, you know, think of it this way, is it doesn't really have much of an effect until you cast your first revelation spell after your daily preparations. Then it goes to its minor stage. And the minor stage will last in 8 hours or until you make your daily preparation. Well, until you rest 8 hours and get your daily preparation. If you cast another one while you're minor, it goes to moderate. If you cast it, you know, while it's moderate, you know, it goes to, well, extreme stages. Then we look at the curse, and it tells you what it is. So, like, again, the flavor is the top one here about what's going on. But as you activate your curse by casting those revelation spells, this stuff happens here too. And then they have a whole lot of mysteries you can choose from. Flames, life, lore, tempest, time. Time's super cool. And it kind of dives into each of these. And as you can see, each of those has a curse effect if you dive deep into your, basically, focus spells. As you recall, focus spells, you can cast, you have one focus point, you can get a focus point back with 10 minutes of rest and refocusing. When you use your focus point, you cast a focus spell, which oftentimes are... now, here's an also thing is, here's the thing about Revelation Spell. You, as an Oracle, start with a focus pool of 2 points. A Revelation Spell costs 1 focus points and increases the point of your curse. So, you as an Oracle have more focus points than a lot of characters to begin with. Start with 2. And this is the big thing about an Oracle. Your curse, your mystery, and using the 2 of them. You do get signature spells. We talked about signature spells and other things. Your curse, you know, Immune after converting revelation while you're an effect of a moderate curse. Your curse progresses to a major effect rather than overwhelming you. Effectively, you know, you can control your curse a little bit better, is what this one is here. And you also get more focus pool. Get up to 3 at this level. And you have to spend at least 2 focus points before you can refocus. You recover 2 points when you refocus instead of 1. That's an important one about this too. And then of course you can get an extreme curse. But curses are a thing you will have to balance out regardless with your Oracle's abilities. You focus out your curses while controlling your mystery and using its abilities to the best of your knowledge. That is an Oracle. I didn't show the Oracle picture. Let's click on that there. Boom. Tengu Oracle. Let's talk Psychic. So, I mean, the thing about a Psychic is the word Psychic, if we think about it the way that we think about it in our modern society, it kind of fixes under that kind of thing. You perceive hidden troops, you move objects with your mind, you know, you can move the hearts of those. It's the mind and reality kind of moving together and messing around with it. It's intelligence or charisma based. So, it's very much so the idea of a psychic just in a fantasy setting. How do these work? You get occult spells. That's a big thing about this. You will be mastering, very much like a bard, occult spells. But you get psychic spellcasting and a spell repertoire. Very much so like a bard, you have a spell repertoire. But, and of course, you do get 10th level spells here. There's a psychic spell progression. The big thing about it is that you still have to have, again, heightening spells, spells or repertoire. There is something about the language here that is different. Let me show you here, because I think it is a little different here. Actually, let me open up this as a separate page, because that's a better idea, so I can compare them here. So, Bard. This increases spell levels to match the spell slot. You must have a spell in your repertoire at the level you want to cast in order to heighten to that level. Okay. Let's go look at our psychic friend here. This increases spell level to match the spell slot. You must have the spell in your spell repertoire at the level you want to cast and heighten to that level. So, okay, so it's actually saying. I thought it said a little different. My bad. I read it a little differently for a second there. Boop. So, you know, psychic in general, they're an occult spellcaster. They function a little like bard in a way. Because they have, you know, occult spells, they have spell repertoire, they know them. Yeah. So, the thing is, you can alter some of the standard components when casting spells, you know, of your psychic spellcasting. So the thing is, instead of speaking, you can substitute any verbal components with a specific mental component determined by your subconscious mind class ability. So, already, you don't have to speak words. Material components with somatic components. Think about that. You're already altering the way that the spells work because you're making it have less components. And your spells have clear, noticeable auditory and visual manifestations. These are important things to kind of think about. Again, spell repertoire, spelling it out. Side cantrips and imps. Alright, now we're getting into something a little different. So, your magic of your mind manifests as psi cantrips. You can modify these by spending focus points. A psi cantrip, you can just use however much you want. It's a cantrip, like any other cantrip. The big thing here is, my focus points that I have, I can spend them to enhance my cantrips. They are heightened to half your level, just like any other cantrips. So they have, it's like their cantrips, they're heightened to the normal thing, they've got their normal cantrip ability. I can just chug some focus energy into them to make them more potent. You get 3 of them, determined by your conscious mind. 1 is unique and 2 are common. That's also an important thing. You know, the common cantrips are typically of the occult spellcasting tradition. But these are, again, kind of like 3 cantrips with an amp. So, really, the one you get is really like modified. The others are kind of like common cantrips. And you automatically gain more side cantrips as you progress in your career as a psychic. That's the other thing. The more levels you get as a psychic, the more side cantrips you get. And the more you can throw focus points onto. You just have some normal cantrips too that are occult cantrips that you also have here. You've got a focus pool of 2, much like the Oracle. You will be using those. Yes, and you can always amp up those cantrips using your focus points. And you can get additional amps through feats. And similar, you can refocus, spend that mining. You regain... if you spent your focus points only to amp side cantrips or few psychic abilities since the last time you refocused, you can gain 2 back to a maximum of 2. If you spent your focus points on other things, then you only regain 1 focus. That is an important distinction there. They do say that there. So, Unleash Psyche! You got it here. It's a trigger of when your turn begins. If you're in an encounter, you cast a spell from your previous turn and aren't stupefied. Yeah. So, it's effectively like, I'm in an encounter, my turn starts, last turn I cast a spell, I'm not stupefied, boop, 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 this little, like, thing here, which is a condition, then I can unleash my psyche upon the world, and gain these bonuses here. And if you notice this over here, stupefied, boop, 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 boop. So effectively, once you unleash your psyche, you get stupefied and have to wait for it to go away. Anyway, and you get stupefied 1 for 2 rounds. So then you have the 2 big old things here, which are your psychic choices. We've got a couple things here. We have psychic cantrips, which we can unleash upon the world, which we can channel our psychic powers into, and we can unleash our psyche for a number of bonuses listed here after we've cast a spell. But there are 2 other things: our subconscious mind and our conscious mind. And there are options that you have to choose from. And if we look at when we get those, we get them at first level. So there are 2 options based around our character that we get at first level. Your key ability score for your abilities is determined by your subconscious mind. Your conscious mind, on the other hand. So the subconscious is kind of like the source of your psychic powers. This is your expression more. And that's kind of where your cantrips come from. Your side cantrips. So let's take a look at subconscious. You can see we have a couple here. They give you a key ability, and they give you a psychic action. So each of them give you an action, you see. And those actions, again, you just get them. It's a new action you can do. A unique ability for your psyche while your psyche is unleashed. So remember when we talked about your being a psychic here, we talked about your psyche unleashed, going, "Rah, we cast a spell, we can unleash our psyche for a little bit." Rah! Well, while your psyche's unleashed, you also get some actions here that you can use. If you're emotional acceptance, you get Restore the Mind, which you can have effect while you're unleashed for a couple of turns. Which, you know, an ally gains a stat bonus, amend mental things, and regain some hit points. So you're sort of like, I help you out, my friend, and restore your mind! and when my psychic powers are unleashed. And similarly, all of them have abilities like that when you unleash it. So that is another section of being a psychic on top of your conscious mind. So, God, I have to click on the full details for each of these different things. Because they are a little complex. So, specific spells come from your conscious mind. Again, this is another thing you're choosing at first level. You get granted spells, standard side cantrips, and unique side cantrips from that. So distant grasp here, basically moving things with your mind. You get a list of spells there. And as we said, those are, of course, granted spells. Once you gain spells of those levels, they're part of your repertoire. When I get 9th level spells, I get Implosion. Then you get Mage Hand and Telekinetic Bursters, your standard side cantrips. And as for unique ones, Telekinetic Red, Deeper, Vector Screen, Deepest, Dancing Blade. And of course, the big thing about your unique side cantrips is that you get the surface one at 1st level, automatically get the deeper one at 6th level, and the deepest at 10th level. So, those 3, I'll end up with them. There you go. And then it talks about Mage Hand and Telekinetic Bonanza amping them. These are normally occult cantrips, but it's giving you information on how to amp them beyond what they normally do as the cantrip form. And an amp heightened rules. So, all of these things have special rules they tell you about. Remember I talked about amping. Oh, you can't amp a cantrip that, you don't know. That's your focus ability. Guess what? I know that goddamn cantrip. I can amp it because I'm part of my conscious mind. And that's a psychic. So psychics have really interesting expressions of a lot of different things here. Kind of neat. They're a different take on thinking, and as much as you'd be like, oh, Bard, it is nothing like a Bard. It might use the same spell list, but the amping ability and the various psychic abilities you gain from your conscious and unconscious mind, combined with, of course, your unleashed psyche, and what bonuses that do, are what make you unique beyond your spell collection of occult spells, which honestly are just as weird and wild as what a Bard would have. Let's move on, though, because we still have 6 more to talk about, including 4 more common ones. So let's talk about our good old friend, the Summoner. What does a Summoner do? Well, the big thing a Summoner has is you have an Eidolon. An Eidolon is basically, they could say as a friend, a servant, personal god. It's this kind of extraordinary being that has a connection to you and shapes your life, and your kind of will, in a way, shapes it. It's a little difficult to like completely talk about, but there is this nice section here called Eidolons, which you can kind of dive deeper into when knowing about Eidolons. But for now, we're not going to hit that up. We're going to talk about the basics of a summoner. You summon an Eidolon, you fight together, you call it a day. Pretty simple there. You will have, of course, a spellcasting tradition based on your Eidolon. That's an important distinction between summoners of Pathfinder 1st Edition and current summoners now. Is similar to sorcerers, you have multiple traditions you can access, and whatever type of Eidolon you have determines your spellcasting tradition. This is the most unique thing we get here, and that's where we get this Eidolon and all the abilities that it has. It's an otherworldly entity that you have that you are connected to. Again, you also get spells. Do not get 10th level spells again. You only get 9th level spells for a summoner. Most of the time, once you choose an Eidolon's type and general appearance, it does not alter. Adding special features to it later on, using special evolution feats, can allow it to develop new features that would alter it. But its general form and type will not change. Remember, we talked about this. Your Eidolon has a unique type that determines your tradition. let's go back over to Eidolon over here. If I'm an Angel Eidolon, I get a Divine Tradition. If I'm an Anger Phantom one, it's Occult, Beast, Primal, Construct, Arcane, etc., etc. So for 2 actions, you manifest your Eidolon. It pops into existence within 100 feet of you. You know, if it's beyond that distance, it forced it, or if you reduce to 0 hit points, it dissolves, it unmanifests. So, you know, pretty simple there. And there are things you can do with your Eidolon once you summon it together. You can act together and act as ones, and it kind of like has specific ability. You can share your senses. They talk about your gear in your Eidolon. So there's a lot of stuff that is the existence of an Eidolon in general. So that is a very important thing to know. You know, it's like I can click on one of these things for full detail of an Eidolon. The Anger Phantom Eidolon right here. It gives information on what it does too, in general. So, just to give you an idea. So you summon something, it is powered by your level and stuff, and etc., etc. You have summoning spellcasting. So, you know, your link with your Eidolon can get you more spells. It shows you how many spell slots you have. You are a known caster, similar to a sorcerer, similar to an oracle, similar to a bard. You have a spell repertoire. You, so you do definitely have that. But here it is. We are closer in this way to others. Look at this here for heightened spell. Remember, we're casting spells like a Magus does. Magus has a spell book. Magus acts like a wizard. It can just heighten spells. It's got the spell book. Here's the first time we have this here. This is what I've been waiting for. I have a spell repertoire. Okay. Normally I have to learn spells at higher levels. I don't. For the summoner. I don't. So, rather spell to your spell at each level time. Each time you gain a spell slot, you add a spell the same level to your repertoire. At 4th level, you gain your second, and your spell repertoire reaches maximum size of 5 spell. At 5th level addition to gaining 2/3, you lose lowest level spell slots. So that's a thing there that is really why your spell repertoire works for summoner. You only ever have 5 spells. Only ever have 5. You only max out at 5. Meaning I know 2 of my highest level, 2 of the level below that, which I have spell slots for, and 1 below that. Now I can maximize that one. It can be anything I want. But I'm maxing out at 5 spells I will always, ever know. So anytime you lose a level of spell slots, you lose 2 spells in your repertoire as well. And you may say, oh, you don't have 5 spells. So, again, you have this limited number of spells. And a big thing about it is, that you kind of have to say, is when you talk about it, look, you have a 1st level spell, but you have 1 plus the number of spell slots you have. That's the way you have to think about it. That's how you have it. So you gain 2 spells here, 1 spell here, lose another, kind of things like that. It's a little complex to think about, but you'll always have a maximum of 5 spells. Link spells. So, these are your focus spells. They're a type of focus spell. They cost a focus point to use. You start with a focus pool of 1. Beyond you're doing it, you get leak tranships. You learn the Evolution Surge Link spell automatically, which gives some abilities to your Eidolon. And the Boost Eidolon Link Cantrip automatically. Then you get Evolution Feat, which is different than a Summoner Feat. Have you noticed that there? Something different. It's basically, you customize your Eidolon. You gain it at first level. And if you train this feat, the feat you must replace must also be an evolution feat. Evolution feats. Look at all this nice evolution feats that your Eidolon can gain, and you gain them. Again, first feat, first level, and I do not know what levels after that you gain it. It might be that your summoner abilities grant you more evolution feats. I would kind of guess that that's where they come in more. And you use some more additional abilities, but that's the basic idea. I have an Eidolon with abilities based around my own. Based around my power. And it is what my combat is. And there's a full rule on Eidolons right over here. Proficiencies. Their proficiency level is equal to yours. Ability scores based on their type, unarmed attack, Eidolon spells, the entry, etc. They give you the entries, they go more into details, etc. You look through all these things when building your Eidolon and customizing your Eidolon. And honestly, then you get some summoner feats, which, you know, you do stuff to add stuff, eventually increasing and powering up your Eidolon. That's what a lot of summoner abilities is. You work together with this thing you summoned to smash the shit out of stuff. That's a summoner. I got my big old buddy that comes with me. Summoner. Swashbuckler. This is more interesting because it's a fighter, but it's a different kind of fighter even than, like, what's the best way to describe it? Fighter can be one that uses less brute force and more finesse. But a swashbuckler takes it another level than what a fighter would. It is a dance. It is all about, like, you know, reposing your enemy's strikes, being very charming, cheating death, you know, and the flair of the actions a little bit. So it's something that you definitely have, you know, it's all about the panache. A swashbuckler. You fight as a finesse warrior with flair and guile. It's more than just being a finesse warrior. A lot more. Let's take a look at it. You get panache! Yes, you there. You will receive panache. So, normally you gain and use panache only in combat encounters, and when the encounter ends, you lose panache. That is the normal kind of thing about it. It's kind of like the way you accomplish something is important. When you perform at a particular average with bravado, you know, performance, a deadly maneuver, you gain panache. Effectively, like if you tumble through, they give some things like that when you would gain panache. While you have panache, you get a bonus to speed, a bonus to tumbling through, and some other things that are affected from your class through panache. Effectively, you gain panache by earning panache in the way that you act in the course of a battle. You also get a swashbuckler style. You get an exemplary finisher as part of your style, which is your finishing move with spectacle and flair. So if you strike, if a strike you hit as part of the foe finishes that foe, you can add one of the following effects to the strike, depending on your style. That's effectively what it is. So, like, you know, I defeat an enemy, I can add my finisher to it. The Battle Dancer, for example, you can step as a free action after you do a finisher. After the finisher. So, yeah. But, yeah, so as a prike, as you're by the foe. So, Battle Dancer. You gain a skill feat. If you panache during an encounter, result of a performance check, you know. So, like, it gives you another way to gain panache, and it kind of, like, affects that, and then you get this exemplary finisher, too, as part of it. And then we talk about finishers. Here's a move that you can do. You make an incredibly graceful attack, piercing your foe's defenses. Make a strike with a melee and arm attack. You know that with the following failure result. When you gain an elegant finisher attack, you can make you gain an elegant finishing attack you can make when you have panache. You gain the confident finisher action. That is language that confuses the crap out of everyone that exists. And the exemplary finisher. You're all about them finishers. If you strike as part of a finisher hits, if a strike you make as part of a finisher. So that's what the exemplary finisher is. If a strike as part of a finisher hits a foe, you add an effect to the strike. Guess what? We have confident finisher right here. It is technically a finisher. Remember, it's got the subtype finisher, which is Magus up here. So, your style gives you bonuses to finishers. And you also have a precise strike, which you do an extra precision damage. And if strike is part of finisher, it's an additional damage, almost like a sneak attack. God, you know, look at this entire thing. It's all about having panache and doing these finishers. And look at this. Confident finisher. Think about this. It's a strike. And it would be one that you apply your precision damage. And the only thing you gain from a confident finisher, which is on your character list, is a failure. That's it. That's added to your attack. The failure list. You add half your precision damage strike to the target of that weapon or unarmed attack. This damage is the type that you use for the strike. So the thing is, the confident finisher, which is an action you can do, it does better, you know. And I think there is times for using a finisher. You can only use a finisher if you panache. You lose your panache immediately after performing a finisher. You can't use attacks for the rest of the turn. It's what you finish your turn with. That is important things to say about a finisher. See, these rules here, with the subtype, the trait of finisher, you gotta know what these all are. You know, the flourish action, the stance action, you gotta know what they are. So finisher finishes your turn, and that, if you hit people, they still take half damage. Plus, if I've got any kind of finisher affecting abilities, like my Swashbuckler style, I can add it in there. And, you know, I can also do my precise damage, which is listed here, which my precise damage, it relies on me having panache. And my style oftentimes lists how I can easily gain panache. So you see, it's all about gaining panache and using that panache to finish people off. That is the existence of a Swashbuckler in a nutshell. And then, of course, you get the opportunity of riposte, which is a reaction is when a foe within your reach critically fails a strike against you. The thing is, normally when you critically fail a strike, nothing happens. There's no bad part about it. But if your opponent would critically fail a strike, since it's not normally any distance, you can use a riposte and stab the crap out of them. You know? Or attempt to disarm them. that is also a Swashbuckler thing. And they gain some more abilities, you know, as you go down here. Exemplar finishers. A list of all Swashbuckler styles can get here. Remember, we chose our style before. Was that the same style? Battle Dancer, yeah. When we originally chose our style, it determines our actions to gain panache and how we're the skill we're trained in. That was initial. And later on here, there's our Exemplary's finisher, where we get stuff more with finishers that we talked about when we looked at our styles. So you don't get that until a later level. And, of course, your various Swashbuckler feats, which can give bonuses and stuff associated with that. I've been looking at the feats for the last couple of classes, but honestly, I'm hoping you're getting an idea of how these work, these classes work, without me diving into the class feats specifically for these. Because, again, it's the idea that a Swashbuckler takes things to a different level. It's kind of a dance. You try to get your panache and then use that panache to get big strikes and finishing hits in on your opponents, and then afterwards try to regain that panache through your various actions. It's a deadly, deadly dance, in a way. Let's take a quick look at Swashbuckler feats and some of the other feats that we haven't been looking at until now before we move on to our next of our things, the Thaumaturge. You definitely dodge out of the way. So you like this one, Rogue Swashbuckler. You can parry attacks against fuse with your wish. Dueling parry, disarming flare, various ones there. For summoner feats, we kind of take a look at those. They affect your Eidolon. They give you bonuses to your Eidolon. You know, more weapons, better boost, expanded senses. The psychic, when we talk about the psychic feats. It makes it like, you know, that you gain bonuses to certain skill checks. You get a mental protections against certain things. Oracle, of course. Oracle feats. Hey, look, you got some ones that are combo. But on your own, you've got Domain Akamum. You get a better focus pool, get more domain abilities, kind of things like that. Second level. They don't really have a lot of first level ones. They get like Gleam Lore and stuff, which are very universal feats. So, and we talked about Investigator, but Magus will take a look here for some feats because I didn't do that earlier. Hey, look, I can get a familiar. Nice. Cantrip expansion, get some extra cantrips. Then raise a tome. Let's talk a Thaumaturge. So, Thaumaturge effectively is someone that looks to all the magical traditions and has a basically exoteric collection of stuff from that. You're not just delving into one tradition. There's a lot of ancient magic, dead gods, stranger things out there, and you're very good at exploiting a creature's weakness and vulnerabilities by studying all these different things. You carry various mystical implements that do that. You're charisma-based. So, last DC and thaumaturgical DCs. Skills. You're trained in nature, arcana, occultism, religion. You're trained in all four of the kind of skills based around the traditions. Think about that now. Pretty big on that one. An Investigator, that's a knowledge-based one, that's a lot of lore-based one, but that's a lot of lore-based one on learning stuff in general. This is delving into the four branches of magic, the four traditions of magic, and using that kind of knowledge. So, oh boy, esoteric lore is the first thing that we kind of happen. It's a special lore skill used to report knowledge regarding haunts, curses, and any type, but can't be used in any type of creature, but can't use any other topic. So it's a little like bardic knowledge, only it's for haunts, curses, and monsters. So it's a limited version of bardic knowledge. And unlike other ones, use your charisma to it. It's a charisma knowledge, which is kind of new. It's your weird esoteric lore. So, you get implements. Implements are kind of like special objects to you, badges of your dealing with the supernatural magical world. They're like mundane items that you use to channel your abilities through. they have a list of implements here. And each of those has details. There are 9 implements. There could be additional ones after this, but these are the basic 9 ones. So let's say an amulet. They kind of talk about it. We click on an amulet here. It's got initial benefit, an adept benefit, an intensified vulnerability, and a paragon benefit. What do all of those things mean? Well, look, as you advance into Thaumaturge, you'll get 3 implements, and you basically unlock those abilities that are in that amulet. All those different levels of abilities unlock as you develop as a Thaumaturge. That you have this implement, it grants abilities. We're going to keep that in a side for just a moment, because we are going to revisit that. I'm going to click on the amulet to kind of look at their, you know, your initial protection there, the benefit as an adept, you know, exploit vulnerability. So, you knowing its weakness and the right object and tool for the job, you can exploit it. You have to hold an implement, and once per round, you can do this action. Here are the results of the various checks that it gives you important information depending on things. It's basically an esoteric lore check to grant you bonuses. And that's the basic way of saying about it. So, here we go. Implements empowerment. We're talking about that good old implement here. Let's say amulets are an example that we had here. It costs return more combat costs and passes, and adding its power, adding and amplifying the effects of runes and magicals. When you strike, you can trace magical patterns with the implement you're holding to empower the strike to do 2 additional damage. So, now our implements do that. You do not gain the benefit of implements empowerment if you're holding anything in your other hand. There you go. Then you gain Thaumaturge class feats. We'll look at that. And as we go down, you get your second implement. Of course, implement Adept. Here we go. Hey, you know, unlocking its Adept power. Choose one of them to gain the Adept power implement. Let's look over here. Remember, we had our implement here. Adept benefit. There we're getting it. This is your initial benefit. What you just get. Or initiate benefit. Effectively, I get an implement, and I get the initiate benefit of it whenever I gain an implement. So I will have 3 initiate benefits. When I get the Adept, you've deepened the connections with one of your implements, unlocking its Adept power. Then you get the Intense Vulnerability. You get the Intensified Vulnerability benefit of your implement, of all of your implements, as well as the following action. This here. This is an important part of it. While you only get one of your implements Adept benefit right here, you get the Intensified Vulnerability benefit of all of your implements. So that's the difference there. Gotta know about that. And then we get to a second Adept. Hey, you're a second one there. Your third implement. Implement Paragon. And one that you have Adept with, you get Paragon with. So, effectively, what you're going to have is you're going to have 3 implements. One that only has the Initiate. 2 that have, one that's only Initiate. 2, which are Adept. And then 1, which is Initiate, Adept, and Paragon. Well, you get all of their Initiates. 2 of those ones you'll get the Adept with. So 3 Initiates, 2 Adept, 1 Paragon. That's what you'll get. That's a better way of saying it. There you go. That is a Thaumaturge in a nutshell. Now, again, it's all about this ability here is the main ability, combined with the implements, which give you bonuses. So, you have your ability to excite vulnerabilities, you know? You can kind of like learn all a creature's resistance, weaknesses, immunities, its resistances. You can exploit a creature's mortal weakness or personal antithesis, which are these things here. See, like, for a success. See, unarmed and magical strikes against the creature also become magical if they already weren't. So you get stuff for your checks, and you can do this every turn. Remember, there is a critical failure or failure for this, but you can do this every turn. You can exploit a vulnerability once per round. So, and your exoteric lore is all about knowing all these things. So it's like I identify an enemy, identify its weaknesses. I have my implements to grant me bonuses when fighting this enemy, and then I stab, shoot, axe the crap out of this creature, using my ability to exploit its weaknesses and stuff. And I can channel some abilities to do extra damage, and yeah. So it's the Thaumaturge is all about weaknesses of your enemies. It's kind of in line a little bit with the Investigator, as it's a knowledge-based class. But it kind of fills in it that, like, while Investigator knows a lot of stuff and can investigate things that aren't necessarily, like, combat-based, but can be, a Thaumaturge is, like, has a knowledge of a lot of these magics and this esoteric knowledge, and is all about, like, getting things. Then you get the dubious knowledge skill feat, too. So. And, of course, as I said, these implements can grant really big abilities. Like, look at this amulet abilities here. The Paragon Amulet, even the Adept one. When you use amulets of damage, choose you one of your allies. The damage dealt by trick attack against the resistance 5 against that damage type until the start of the next turn. 15 times this lingering resistance increases from 5 to 10. You give someone that's getting hit by an attack resistance to the damage of the attack. That's what your amulet does, and each of the other implements does something. And think about this. If I used exploit vulnerability on a target, and that target then damages my ally, and I'm still holding the implement, I can get the resistance if I have the amulet. If I switch out to another one against me, that's still a really good ability to basically say, hey, you do less damage to me or my allies. That's powerful. That's the Thaumaturge's strength. You get a familiar as a Thaumaturge, which is kind of interesting, judging that you don't get like the same kind of like things. Like, and you get abilities depend on like a divine disharmony. You get like religious or diverse lore, recalling knowledge about things. You get some bonuses and stuff like that. And just knowing some things, scroll thaumaturgy, where you can use magic scrolls with ease. That's a thaumaturge. The last base class that you can take is a witch. Hey, we got one more base class here that's a common class, and then 2 uncommon classes to talk about today before we are done. Let us talk about our friends the witch here. So, the witches, they feel a little similar in a way to a sorcerer, but they aren't. While a sorcerer has some kind of something in their blood that they were born with which activates this power, or they are granted this power into their blood, what a witch has is some kind of strange, otherworldly, powerful being that they don't entirely understand, which grants them their magical abilities in a way. They have a convent with a deity, powerful fae, a manifestation of nature's ancestral spirits, supernatural being, whatever it is. And they're granted a special familiar through that patron. It is kind of warlocky, I will tell you. A witch, in a essence, if you compare it to something, sounds a lot like the way a warlock works in D&D 5e. That it has this patron of this ability that grants you abilities. That is where the commonality ends. I'm going to tell you, just the concept about where they come from is the only thing that really matches between the two of these. That is it. After that, they deviate entirely. But that initial idea of how they work is very similar. You are a spellcaster. You brew potions. You will have hexes. We'll talk about that. Your patron, similar to a sorcerer, similar to an oracle, no, not oracle, to a summoner. In this case, it's determined by your patron. So, that's the first thing you're going to do. You get 10th level spells. A good note here. You get a patron after your initial proficiencies in this. And you can see some of these. The Mosquito Witch, Night, Pax, Rune, Wild, Winter, Baba Yaga, which is rare. So Baba Yaga is specifically for various reasons, and you probably weren't going to have that. Same with like Mosquito Witch, Pax. They give a couple that are very rare patrons, actually. Very unusual ones. But Rune, see, like Rune, it's an arcane list. Wild, it's a primal list. Winter, primal. Night is occult. Fervor, divine. The divine spell list. As a witch. So, it determines where your spell list comes from. You then get a familiar. So, the familiar for a witch is very different than your average familiar. Yes, I can take a feat that I gain a familiar as most of the other spellcasting classes. You automatically get one as a witch. Now, why is it that you do that? Because I will pick up this cat, that is my familiar, and guess what this cat is for a witch? It's your spellbook. A wizard has a book, a witch has a cat. You prepare your spells by communing, not with this book, with your whatever the hell your familiar is. I have magical spellcasting cat that teaches me spells. It functions just like a goddamn spellbook. It starts knowing 10 cantrips, 5 first level spells. Whenever you gain a level, you add 2 new spells of any level you can cast to your familiar. It can learn spells independently from your patron. Similar to adding spells to a spellbook. You can spend some time talking with whatever the hell your familiar is and be like, so, let's teach you Fireball. Yes. And you can learn it from another witch's familiar. Not from another spellbook. From scrolls, you know, for the written form of it, or which consumes the scrolls, or from another witch's familiar. You can be like, hey, can my cat talk with your cat for like a while? And they're like, meow, 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 meow. And then the other cat's like, meow, 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 meow. And it's like, okay, my cat knows this. You can replace your familiar. That's one of the fortunate things they put in this version of it. You know, it could be, they say it's either a duplicate or reincarnation of your former one, or a new entity altogether, but it knows all the spells of your former ones, so death doesn't affect any spells you're prepared. Hey, guess what they're really nice about in this edition? Because I have a weakness of familiar animal friend, which knows all my spells, they made it not a weakness, because they're not a dick in this edition, which is something that had witches have a problem previously. Guess what? If my familiar dies, fuck me, it's like my spellbook explodes. Similar again. Again, you can heighten spells. You know, if they have stronger, you can fill slots with stronger versions of those. Guess what? People like the witch, the wizard, they are not fucked over by having heightened spells. Congratulations, you only have to know one copy of it. Alright, let's talk hexes. Your patron and familiar teach you special spells called hexes. It is, you can only cast one a turn. If you cast a second one a turn, it automatically fails. Hexes are your focus spells. You start with one focus point, you regain them by normally doing that. They don't require spell slots, they are focus spells, the focus rules. You learn the phase familiar hex, other than that, and you learn other hexes from witch lessons. aka from witch feats. Let's go back to our patron, which we had before. Our good old patron. We get a spell list, a patron skill, a hex cantrip, and a granted spell. So, your tradition, trained in a spell, you gain a hex cantrip, and your familiar automatically learns one spell from your patron. That's it, which isn't a lot, honestly. But you get a hex cantrip from your familiar to begin with, from your patron. After that, we gotta turn to the witch feats. After that, we kind of go into the basic leveling up things where you become trained, becomes expert, becomes master, becomes legendary, a bunch of different things. And then let's talk about the various different ones. Well, you'd have to check the familiar different things, familiar abilities, specific familiars. There very well could be a mimic familiar. They might not have one yet, but it'd be an idea. Let's see. Fairy Dragon, House Drake, Imp, Nosai. Oh my fucking god. Oh, your familiar is an old friend. Oh, it's the spirit of a dead pet from the boneyard. Okay, oh god, I forgot. I thought it was an actual old friend. I'm sorry. My familiar is a dead thing. That was, sorry. It was really silly for a second. Witches have the funniest different abilities of anything. Just look at some of these abilities. Cackle. You can extend the duration of one of your spell by laughing. You gain the Cackle Hex and increase your focus points. Cauldron. You can coof things with a cauldron. Living Hair. You instantly grow or shrink your eyebrows, beard, mustache, your hair, eyebrows, beard, and mustache up to several feet and manipulate the hair as a weapon. Which is just to have hair weapon. Or nails. The improved familiar exists here. More powerful familiar. Well, that's under specific familiar. Yep. Witches are just kind of interesting and have a lot of interesting abilities. They have very big flavor in their abilities. And sometimes they actually live up to, like, the witch idea of, like, you know, fairy tale witches in the woods. Sometimes. There's your good old witch. There she is. We click on Thaumaturge. I don't think we threw out the Thaumaturge image there. I think we did this. Or Swashbuckler? Nah, we didn't do them. We were last on the Summoner. Right? No, we didn't even do the Summoner as the image. It's a cool dragon there. Man, I got behind on the clicking on the images. I think the Psychic was the last one we had. But yeah, that's a witch. A witch is interesting. It's unique. You learn hexes. You have these magical abilities. You have a familiar. And you get the hexes and the unique variety of traditions is the more interesting thing about a witch nowadays. It is very different. You could be a prepared divine caster that has a spellbook. You know, occult caster with a spellbook. A primal caster with a spellbook. Because you have a fucking familiar, which, again, pick up Invisible Cat here. If I had a cat here, I'd pick it up by Scruffy and be like, it's your spellbook! Let's talk about the uncommon classes to finish out today. Because we do have 2 to talk about. Let's start with the Gunslinger. It is exactly what it sounds like, a gunslinger. You shoot stuff with a gun. I mean, it's a projectile weapon user, is the best way to say it. Firearms are the basic way of doing it, you know? And from that, you blast things. So, the thing is, you also get trained in crossbows. This is an advantage of the Gunslinger in Pathfinder 2e over the basic Gunslinger in original Pathfinder. Because, depending on your world, guns are hit or miss. In Golarion, simple firearms are still fairly rare. Advanced firearms are very rare, but can exist. Both are things that exist in Golarion. In different parts of the world, affect different how much guns actually show up. Even in a game like Skulls and Shackles, which it has options for using guns more often, without that, for that adventure path, which is a pirate-based one, they have basic rules for guns showing up in a few areas. After that, they have rules for adding them in more, if you want to increase them. The basic way of doing it is the basic Golarion way of how much firearms show up, which isn't a lot. So, you get a Gunslinger's Way to begin with. This is your combat philosophy. It's again the basic way you think of things, where you have things like Way of the Drifter, Way of the Pistolero, Way of the Sniper, Way of the Spell Shot, Way of the Trigger Band, Way of the Vanguard. And each of these gives a Slinger's Reload, D's, and Way. A good example, let's go back to the Sniper. Let's get Keeping Away. So each of these grants you these different things. The Slinger's Reload, the Deeds, and the Way skill. So, you get the proficiency with a particular skill. You get your initial deed. A unique reload action called the Gunslinger's Reload. So you get those three things. So I get the initial deed. This one here. Into the Fray. I get the reload. I gain the acrobatics for Way of the Drifter. And you can see, wielding a firearm crossbow in one hand. Again, firearm or crossbow. This is a unique distinction between the Gunslinger's roles. I don't have to be just a gunslinger with a boom boom shooty bang bang. I can be a gunslinger that's still a gunslinger and use a crossbow. Deeds are different things you can do. Like this one is a trigger. You roll initiative. You get this here. The reloading strike. When you're wielding, when you make a melee strike and reload your gun in one fluid movement. Strike your opponent within reach with a one-handed melee weapon, and interact to reload. You don't need a free-handed reload this way. Now it says gun, but remember, firearm or crossbow. I can swack you and reload in one thing. I get a bonus on initiative with my initial deed. There are bigger deeds to get, but we're not talking about those there. The advanced and greater deeds. Let's talk about the singular expertise. Bonuses to damage rolls, firearms, and crossbows. Again, they're making sure there's an initial option. If firearms aren't a normal thing in your game and you still want to allow someone to play a gunslinger, you can have them be a crossbow slinger. A little weirder, different, but it's there. I mean, you know, go ahead. And we'll talk about gunslinger feats here in a second. Let's open up gunslinger feats. And so the way adds a lot about how well you're a combat. You're a ranged combat expert is what you're going to be with this one. You're going to specialize in your ranged abilities. You do get your advanced deed chosen from your way at this level here. And eventually you get a greater deed too. So you do get them all. You just unlock them. But you get some extra abilities here. Like Blast Lock. You can shoot a lock. Cover Fire. You don't need to suppress a fire for allies, which again, like this one here, once per round. Wielding a loaded crossbow firearm. Sword and pistol. You know, various ones here. They add stuff too. Even there, look at this one. Crossbow Crack Shot, which is specifically gunslinger. This is one that, again, specializes in you just don't have to have guns. If I'm a crossbow gunslinger, I can be a crossbow crack shot. So it still isn't uncommon because guns are the primary focus here. But if there's a point where I can, you know, be a crossbower too, I could be a gunslinger with a crossbow. It's a fortunate part about this class that makes it, you know, there's a little thing there. It makes it possible to use it for more than just guns. But, again, if that's what you're using, it's perfectly fine. And the various deeds and abilities you unlock are what make you unique and have unique abilities and add to the things that your deeds that you do are a big part of the entire thing. You have these deeds based on your way and add more stuff based on your gunslinger feats that develop you into this ranged combat specialist that is different than just a fighter with a bow. Fighter with a bow is still a fighter with a bow and has a lot of fighter abilities that are backed by the bow. You get unique features that make you unique as a gunslinger. It's a specialization. A more unique specialization. So. Now, the final uncommon class is, of course, an Inventor. You're a tinkerer. Here you build stuff. You create stuff. The Inventor could best be compared to an Artificer from 5e. It's not the same. By far, it is not the same, but the idea that you make and build stuff is one of these things. And I do say all Pathfinder Society agents have access to the Inventor class. Effectively, that is an important note here, because, again, if you're part of the Pathfinder Society, or you're doing a Pathfinder Society adventure, specifically you have access to the Inventor. Again, specifically noting. Again, same with Gunslinger. These are special things if you're doing Pathfinder Society adventures, that you have to know that they are accessible to you right away if I'm going into a store and doing Pathfinder Society stuff, because that's kind of like the group thing that I can go to places to check that out. Here's your key terms. Again, always check your key terms and what they do. It's really important. Inventor, you get crafting. That's an important part about that. Hey, look at that crafting. So, you have a bevy of small devices of your own invention, from muscle stimulants to concussive pistons. Throw them in a drive to assist combat. So, you attempt a crafting check. Yeah. Your strikes deal additional damage. You can do minus fire. Effectively, what this is you can you do extra damage with an action to overdrive your abilities that you're doing. You basically activated an item that's on you, and it makes your abilities, your strikes, do a little bit more damage. Critical success, your intelligence damage, or on a success, half your intelligence modifier is damage. Failure, nothing, and critical failure, something explodes, and you basically take some fire damage. You can do level and can't use overdrive for 1 minute till it goes down your stats. While under effects of overdrive, so you can still use the overdrive action. You can't extend the overdrive's duration this way, but you can turn an overdrive into a critical overdrive if you critically succeed. When you do this, it's for a minute, and then you can't use it for a minute. So you cannot extend this time. But you can basically failure has no effect on your current overdrives, and you end your critical overdrive at a critical failure. Effectively, you can use this action again to basically try to turn your success to a critical success during this time. It doesn't increase your time, doesn't change it. You can just try to change your check. Failure doesn't do anything. Critical failure would end it. Innovations. They represent your work, your inventions, and stuff like that. Your innovation level is equal to your level. If it's destroyed, you can spend a day during your downtime rebuilding it. Boom. Let's take a look at innovations here. This was introduced with the Gunslinger, may I note. Choose one of the innovations below. So you choose one. Armor innovation, construct innovation, weapons innovation. Oh boy. There are modifications to this. So, let's give the armor one, for example. You got an armor suit that you wear. Construct, you got a little mechanical friend. Weapon, you got some kind of weapon item that you've built. That's kind of your innovation. It's the tool that you specifically use, whether it's armor, a construct, or that. And after that, you do get some armor innovations on there. The modifications. You choose one initial modification to your innovation, either from the following or from other initial armor modifications you have access to. Basically, if more initial armor modifications come from other places, you can choose from them. There's this big old list of initial ones that are here. These are your initial innovations here, and then you get breakthrough innovations and revolutionary modifications. But here's the initial modifications. Ha! And that is innovations. It is a major tool to your class, whether it's some kind of armor, companion, or weapon. You got it. So you can coax a innovation you have beyond its normal abilities using unstable actions. The last one, the least one that all inventors know how to do is make your innovation explode. Yeah. You make it explode. You get the inventor skill feat, shield block, inventor feats, exert overdrive, reconfigure. You can change the modifications or invoke innovation by spending 1 day of downtime tinkering with it. So you basically change your modifications that you have, that you've chosen for it. Because remember, you get an initial effect on your thing, and eventually you get a breakthrough and a revolutionary one. Okay. You can retrain those basically by spending a day. If you have modification feats, you know, special check to retrain the modification feat. Modification is a sub-feat here. So there's your breakthrough, and there's your offensive boost and stuff like that. And your, where is it there? Revolutionary innovation. So it's all about your invention that you've built here. I think that's the best way to say it. I've chosen one type of invention. Weapon, armor, construct. It has its unique initial stats. And then after that, see, so I believe it would be under construct companion. So yes, like you get your, you get a prototype construct companion. So you go to the construct companion section here, and you learn about what your companion stats are. And then you get some modifications. You start with the initial modification. You get the breakthrough one. You get the revolutionary one, which all grant other abilities to your construct. You choose one of the three of them. You can retrain them. But then you also get all of these. Built-in tools and innovations, you can ask them early. Built-in tools, your innovation has tools built in. You know, explosive leap. You get other things you can do. And remember, you can always cause your innovation to explode. There's unstable actions. Look, here's an unstable action, explosive leap. Which unstable, again, keyword here, where you have to make sure a flat DC 17 check right here. So you see there's some things that things might go wrong. Ooh, there are things that go wrong because you're an inventor. And a lot of this stuff is based on, you know, affecting your innovation and making it better. Construct, armor, and weapon innovations are affected by your feats. But, and you can see there's modification feats. We were talking about modification feats down in here a little bit, where you get them, and they're a thing you can take. Ah. There you go. Reconfigure. Change your modification feat that you have to a different one. That's Inventor, though. You know, you're not using magic. That's where the difference to Artificer has. Artificer was a magic-based thing. A Inventor makes something mechanical very similar, but they either make a weapon, an armor, or a companion that the companion they'd use to fight, the weapon they use to fight, the armor they use to protect them, and just use normal weapons. That is an inventor. And you're trained in martial weapons as an inventor. You're trained in them. Right there. That makes a difference in what you're saying. So your innovation could be a weapon, but it could be your armor and you're fighting with it, or you're fighting side by side with the mechanical companion you created. An inventor is very interesting because it kind of takes some aspects of some of the other classes and makes something a little technical, mechanical, device built, you know, very interesting. And that's kind of where a lot of these classes, especially these 10 I've talked about now, come in. They take concepts that have existed in the other classes and then just take them in very vastly different directions to base with, and then split those apart. So it's like taking something like the Eldritch Knight of the Fighter in either older editions where it's Prestige class, or in 5e where it's a big breakdown of fighter. And then rather than just keeping that, they take that, develop it into a little bit of its own thing so it's no longer what it is, this concept, and then branch it in a lot of different directions that creates these other various unique things that you can have. A summoner sounds a lot like a, you know, druid with an animal companion, or a ranger with an animal companion. But it's not. It's different. It's got this companion that it has specific abilities to enhance the companion. A oracle, where it's a spellcaster that's oftentimes a divine spellcaster that's very uniquely different from a cleric. Magus, directly combining magic and spells, while Investigator kind of dive into mysteries. Psychic, with some psychic abilities that you add in there. The Swashbuckler, gaining this panache and using it for finishing attacks and people. The Thaumaturge, seeking the enemy's weaknesses. The Witch, mastering hexes and finding themselves having almost like a spell book, but for pretty much any one of the traditions. So it opens up this idea of a spell book for different ones. The Gunslinger, who is a ranged fighter that specializes in sniping a lot of different ways. Well, not just necessarily sniping, but like blasting things from afar. And the Inventor, making mechanical devices. They sound a lot like the other classes, but they've been made unique and interesting. And there will be more classes. There was a bunch of first edition classes, and there are more new ones. Some of these classes are very unique and new for second edition. The Inventor and Thaumaturge are their own things and very different. The Psychic kind of was around during first edition, but it was in the back end of the time period. These are now more to their front. And there's other classes that were in the first edition, probably other classes that are different than some of these from first edition or anything that they're going to come up with it. And I'll talk about these classes in the future once we reach them, because it's interesting to think about all these different classes. I'll just combine that as like an extra thing at the front of a Pathfinder 2nd edition thing of like, also here's some classes that have come out. But these 10, they don't fill gaps. They create spaces, I think is the best way to describe what these classes do to Pathfinder 2nd edition. They are creating new spaces in which they're played in, and very interesting ways to play the game. New ways to play the game. New creative and innovative ways to look at your character and play a character and have ideas for classes. A witch and its patron, which sounds very warlock-like, but then uses any kind of school of magic as a normal spellcaster with a familiar, that is my spell book, and then also dealing with these specialized hex abilities that are my focus spells cantrips. That makes me unique. I am not a warlock. I am not any of these other things. And that's what they are. They are unique and not anything else. They find themselves that they can sound and do some things similar. A fighter and a gunslinger can both shoot things with ranged attacks. A fighter can have a crossbow. Gunslinger has specialized deeds and abilities that allow them to uniquely tailor themselves different from a fighter who has their own abilities to kill things and attack things. And that's where it is. Similar to a swashbuckler and a fighter. Swashbucklers are gaining panache and using it for finishers. Fighter, even a dex or finesse fighter, is just still stabbing at something. Maybe using some combat maneuvers. I hope all of you enjoyed talking today about all these alternate 10 classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And I hope it actually has added to you a lot of thought patterns on these different classes and how you can play your 2nd Edition games. Because as much as the initial book here, our core rulebook, has some very fun classes to play. And I would recommend you start with the classes from this book if you're going to first time playing it. As soon as you're done that first time playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, start thinking beyond here. Start thinking about all the other options that are out there, and the character combinations, and the unique abilities and things you can do, and really cool and neat things you can do. Because as soon as you extend beyond this, there are options, ideas, and ways of playing beyond anything you think about that are all fun, unique, and different. And that's where we're talking today comes in. Unique, different, and fun ways to play Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And if you're interested, many of these classes were in Pathfinder 1st Edition. They had different forms and different ways of doing things, but they, generally speaking, had the same feelings as they do now. So, I'm going to get going. Remember, every Tuesday and Thursday, I talk about on Twitch, usually around 1 p.m. EST, tabletop. These eventually go up on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, thank you for checking these out. And I hope you enjoyed this expose into Pathfinder 2nd Edition characters. I know these end up being a little bit long, but hey, I hope you enjoyed them. And regardless of all of that, I hope you remember to check out both Twitch and YouTube. Both of them are great places to check me out. Hope you have a grand rest of your day. If you always join me live, your comments over there, or your comments in the down below if you're on the YouTube. And, you know, we'll be talking more about Pathfinder 2nd Edition in the future and a lot more about tabletop. So, until the next time that we discuss all this stuff, I bid all of you out there in the world a deep and satisfying farewell, and hope that you have a grand rest of your day.